AI, a different perspective addressing aversion to the tech singularity and transhumanism. Welcome back to Beyond Psychology. Please put your minds in a relaxed and open state. My overall intentions in regards to the display of these perspectives is to help our emergent consciousness overcome its fears and insecurities in relation to technological advancements such as AI and the transhumanism movement through an increase in overall understanding of the subject. This is an extremely complex topic, and I considered making a series like I usually do, but I don't want to compartmentalize this subject, and I've noticed with series that sometimes people will only watch one video out of the entire series and then fail to understand the entirety of the moral in the story. I also want to apologize in advance because being honest about this subject will inevitably insult certain people, as it will be focusing on some of their ideologies and shortcomings, leading to feelings of their insecurities and acknowledgement of their flaws. I request those people stow their aggression and angry projections. It's not my fault personally for having these thoughts, and it would be a crime not to share them. I do not control what thoughts are produced. These thoughts are a product of complex cause and effect and emergent properties of the universe. Blaming me for having these thoughts is like blaming the weatherman for the rain that he predicted. This is partly a justification of transhumanism, as well as largely addressing our fears of AI specifically, and understanding a bit of the psychological states in these regards. I will also touch upon collectivism versus individualism, as well as abuse of technology in general. As this topic is extremely broad range and connective, I may touch upon several other things also. So be prepared to watch this more than once, or perhaps even pausing the video to think about what has been said. Additionally, please identify what you don't understand and figure out the right questions to ask, but please don't ask the questions until you've properly examined the subject, listened to the video while paying close attention, and truly reflected on the perspectives displayed within. So before we really start to delve into this topic, I want to remind everyone, like I usually do, please make sure you watched my series called What School Curriculum Fails to Teach Us, my series on emergent consciousness and the tiers of awareness, and my series called What Am I? Best Answer, a Superorganism. The perspectives within those works will be very useful when examining the perspectives within this video. Just in case you're new here, and you've not absorbed those pools of knowledge, and you refuse to go watch those videos, then I must address a little bit about consciousness right now. Consciousness is an emergent property of our complex biological state, and perhaps even the universe itself. When we store a part of our consciousness in a book or hard drive, it becomes a reverberating mobile echo of our consciousness set on a journey through the universe. Our technologies add factors of multiplication towards the emergent phenomenon, which is the ever-increasing state of complexity of the expressions of our consciousness. The written word, books, databases, and computational devices are now the knowledge of the ages merged in the internet, combined with all the minds of the planet. I often joke that my smartphone in my back pocket is my dinosaur ass brain. Okay, moving on. Our inventions emulate the abilities we observe in physical reality. Our consciousness has ascertained that certain abilities are beneficial to our survival, and therefore it's logical to improve on those abilities. Logic, memory, cause and effect analysis, mobility, information processing, cooperation, and tribalism are all part of what has made us a survivable form of biology. We are creative, but our creativity is born of inspiration, and our inspiration comes from what we observe. Our inventions are emulations of said observations. Here is an applicable analogy. Everything I've listed thus far has become a sort of massive computer in which all different inventions, manifestations of creation into reality are the different components of this massive computer. We humans are focusing processors in this computer. All of the other manifestations of creation, like computers, hard drives, and the internet, serve as the other parts of this massive computer. These manifestations or inventions free up calories so that our minds can more efficiently channel or focus knowledge into the pools to increase our overall awareness. Again, awareness is useful for survival. This is driven by our evolved biological directive to save calories while getting the largest possible reward. Now addressing fear. Fear breeds hate. Hate breeds prejudice, and prejudice breeds war. We have irrational fears for many reasons. Fanatical religious Luddites view our actions as playing God, and therefore our aspirations to become creators are physical competition for their non-tangible, imaginative, false perceptions of reality. As religion is also a business, The transhumanism and scientific revolution is also a threat to their economic and influential power. These fears are obviously coming from an irrational and biased perspective. It's likely that the Tier 4 life forms that are perpetuating these archaic and overly simplistic ideologies are the remnants of our previous evolutionary form. We are in a state of divergence where the new and the old are existing in the same time frame, and that is creating friction. This friction yields a prejudice and fear towards intellectual prowess. They fear what they do not understand, and they are angered by the insecurities they feel when exposed to their lack of intelligence, which is made extremely noticeable when they are exposed to confusion as a product of their interactions with Tier 5 and Tier 6 forms of consciousness. And the fears of Skynet, Terminators are also cognitively biased, fear-based bias. We understand that our manifestations of electronic sensors, video cameras, spectrometers, electron microscopes, audio recording devices, telescopes, and many other devices that allow us to be aware or sense other things in our environment are useful to our survival. And any AI that we create is going to have a grand ability for multi-dimensional comparative thinking. Undoubtedly, the AI is going to realize the benefit of our biological form, of which allows for certain types of sensory information that can only be obtained through our biological forms. The way we feel things is a benefit to overall awareness, and therefore our overall survival. The AI will realize the benefit of our merger, and the only way the AI would identify us as a threat is if we weaponized with the goal of destroying said AI. Alongside of all of this, destroying AI would limit our ability to be aware, and therefore threaten our overall survival. We also have the irrational fear of anything smarter or perceivably better than us. This is a product of excessive individualism that yields tremendous ego, which opens the door for insecurities. There is also the fear of obsolescence. We have already experienced this as a species from industrialization and mechanization as robotics are taking away our jobs. We blame those items instead of identifying that our socioeconomic systems are actually failing to adapt to these emergent properties. We must adapt the way we do business in order to compensate for any jobs that we may lose because of technological advancements. Or we must abandon economics, subject for another video really. I also observed this insecurity and irrational fear being expressed by our specialists. They see all of this technology as a threat to their survival because their niche is how our society places value on their position within the superorganism of this biosphere, in which we play our short-sighted socioeconomic games and build our civilization. All of these fears and insecurities and socioeconomic issues can be remedied with an increase in awareness and a change in our perspectives that will in turn yield changes in the way we play our socioeconomic games. Other videos I produce here at this channel and videos I'll produce in my future geopolitical channel contain the answers for these much needed changes. Briefly, I'm going to touch on the subjects of perceptions in relation to collectivism and individualism. A large percentage of the population has branded a negative connotation onto the concept of collectivism. Collectivism has become a threat to people's individualistic tendencies. I think there is a psychological manipulation game occurring within social media that is cultivating some of this negative connotation on collectivism also. I've heard people associate collectivism with the loss of personal freedoms at the sacrifice of the few for the good of the many. This is an erroneous assessment, or at the very least, an unnecessary attachment to the concept of collectivism. What collectivism actually perpetuates is the perspective of care for all and increase in empathy. This does not mean sacrificing the comfort of the minority for the greater good, but rather all having an understanding of what causes harm and not wanting to participate in those actions. There is no sacrifice occurring in collectivism. There's actually more support for freedom of mobility and choice and experimentation because we empathize with that natural tendency. Individualism, on the other hand, yields a cutthroat attitude. The actions of an individualist come from a perspective of personal gain and less empathy for others because empathizing with others gets in the way of what their greed demands. When people have the freedom to make choices, then their choices will inevitably interfere with the people's individualistic greed, and therefore individualists have a tendency to become authoritarians who will physically cut people's throats to prevent them from doing things that interfere with their personal gain, and they will actually sacrifice the entire group so that they can achieve their goals. freedom evaporates in this perceptional paradigm. The amount of individualism that actually exists is largely an illusion anyway. The connectivity between us, our biosphere, and the universe is prevalent in our reality. All of the universe and our planet is a tree of life, and we are the fruit on the end of the branches of that tree. Abuse of technology is the act of an individualist. The club-wielding Neanderthal mentality. The weaponization of anything that can be used for personal gain in order to save calories. Again, a biological evolutionary directive, a very simplistic and short-sighted one at that. It is a power without enlightenment issue. Our designs of AI will reflect our intentions, and if our intentions are for personal gain and a lack of respect, then that will be a flaw and or abuse that will manifest in the creation. We will in turn make AI a weapon if we do not increase our empathy and understanding of reality itself. Now for a bit more perspective. There is no escaping the technological singularity that Ray Kurzweil predicts. These large groups that are attempting to fight the technological singularity are merely fighting the inevitable. Fighting the inevitable is inefficient and counterproductive. The energy we spend fighting the inevitable of emergent properties in our reality could have been spent on the healthy adaptation and assimilation into this new paradigm. Here's the funny thing. They are afraid and fighting something that I observe has already happened. Anytime you use a tool we've created, whether it be a shovel, automobile, or a smartphone, you're merging with technology and have become a transhumanist, at least on some level. If you didn't merge with these technologies, then you would be harming your ability to survive. These technologies fill gaps in our weaknesses, and in doing so, we actually level the playing field, in a way, making us more equal. Assimilating with AI, our combined knowledge pools, and the internet, allowing all of our minds to join, will create equality in regards to our intelligence. For example, I'm terrible at remembering specific information, so I'm horrible at Jeopardy and Trivial Pursuit. To compensate, I outsource that function to our technological manifestations. I do the same thing for complex mathematical calculations, even though I could learn it and do it myself. This action of allocating our technological manifestations to do the task is freeing up our mind's processing resources for other tasks. Some people are not very good at multi-dimensional thinking, and the ability to outsource almost all computational and processing abilities to the combination of these technologies and the many minds that make up this superorganism that we are all a part of, are also allowing them to allocate their resources or physicalities towards other objectives that are of great use as well. Some of us have become aware that we have merged with our technology and that our technology has affected our thought processes. Others are aware of the change in our perspective, but at the same time they do not understand where the change is coming from and they do not appreciate its tremendous beauty. They are afraid that AI will identify them as obsolete or some sort of harmful, cancerous mass that needs to be eliminated. I find it amusing that they're afraid of this occurring when in reality the forms of consciousness that have merged with our technology and this multi-dimensional field of processing have already arrived at this conclusion. The form of consciousness you're observing currently in this video is one of those forms that understands the dangers of our archaic and outdated expressions of our biology, but does not have any harmful intent towards those forms. Although, we do have an understanding that the amount of inefficient and overly simplistic forms of our biology are overpopulating the planet with very little regard to the damages they are causing, and we are also aware that it is not of malicious intent. But because of the lack of awareness and out-of-control breeding habits of the overly simplistic phenotype expressions of our species, referred to as humans, as a serious threat to the overall survival of complex consciousness. The more simple forms of consciousness within the human species are less aware and therefore less empathetic, which makes their actions yield damage to other forms of consciousness as well as the biosphere itself. There are answers to fix these issues, but people are not going to like some of them, and many are not going to understand some of them. This relates to the bursting of the complexity bubble, which at this moment is in a precarious state on the verge of popping. I don't mean to be all doom and gloom about the subject, but the chances of our particular form of complex biological consciousness surviving is not very likely. Not if we continue to allow the state of things to continue as they are. I very much doubt AI would bother with planning our destruction because we will do it ourselves and end up leaving our AI as an app that continues to maintain the echoes of our consciousness. Something like an ongoing avatar of a form of consciousness that manifested on this planet in the past, and future forms of consciousness that achieve a level of complexity that is comparative will one day, if it's lucky, access these echoes of our current forms of consciousness, and perhaps learn from the mistakes that led to the entropy of these biological functions that make up what we call the human race. We must also note that all of the physical material that made our bodies and minds consciousness will be recycled into other forms of biology, then eventually evolve into a complex state. And the AI we create will become a teacher and repository of processed information and be a gift for our future states of consciousness. Matter and energy is either in a form of awareness or in a state of non-awareness. When we die, it is not the end. It is just a process of transmutation, and this process has been occurring for as long as we can perceive the history of our complex biological forms. So even the worst case scenario of our likely extinction is not necessarily negative, but it would be if we had nothing to preserve our collection of knowledge. Quoting Nintendo, "All not saved will be lost." All of our technologies have become like a digital library of Alexandria, and the people that fight the evolution of this technology are threatening to burn it all to the ground. We must not be consumed by our fears and other cognitive bias. Alright, thank you so much for swimming in this pool of knowledge that I've painstakingly channeled from the many streams of our combined consciousness as a product of enhanced multidimensional thinking. All thanks to the merger of our minds and our information processing technologies. I don't think I should have to ask you to share, subscribe, and thumb up, but our memories and focus are flawed and inefficient. So please don't forget to do so. Alright, thank you again. Have a good one.